Fairy Tail got not one, not two, but 3 new games this year, with another one coming out soon. We've taken a look at 2 indie games that were released a couple of months ago, but today, this is no indie game. From developer Gust and publisher Koei Tecmo comes Fairy Tail 2, a sequel to the Fairy Tail RPG from 2020. I remember playing that game, I even reviewed it, and it was fine. There was nothing groundbreaking about that RPG, but it was good enough if you were a Fairy Tail fan, I guess. And as I jumped into this one, my first thought was, hold up, is this game actually good? Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm not a Fairy Tail fan. I tried watching it, didn't like it. It's not for me. But this game made me question that for a moment. It covers the Alvarez arc, which means nothing to me. This is the first time I'm watching that arc at all. But basically, there's a whole empire about to invade this country with Fairy Tail and all the other magic guilds, and they're starting a war against everyone. The Emperor is the big bad guy that's been teased since forever ago, and he's got a series of elite soldiers known as the Spriggan 12. That just reminds me the way Bleach teased the Espada during Fuego Mundo. This was the final Fairy Tail arc for a while before the author decided to pick up the manga again, but it does have that final story feel to it, and the game wastes no time building up these villains. It goes straight into action. You fight one of them as the tutorial, and after it gets going, it does not stop. About 2 hours into the game, I had already defeated 4 of these 12 elite soldiers, and that pace just keeps going. It's almost like a boss rush, and I love it. No filler, high stakes action all the time, which is such a big contrast to how these RPGs usually play out. Things usually start pretty slow. It builds up enemies over time. You're learning the controls, getting new talents. Not this one. If you want filler, you can rest at a bonfire and see some side stories, but that's only if you want. I'm gonna be honest, I watched a couple of those, now I skip everything else. The main plot is so well paced that I don't want to ruin that. And as far as combat goes, they changed it completely for this game. It used to be turn-based with enemies arranged on a grid, but now it's more of an active battle system. It's still kinda turn-based, but time doesn't stop. Every character can mesh square up to 3 times. This builds up skill points. So next turn, you might mesh square 3 times and then throw a special attack with the points you've built up. And you can chain different specials together if you want, which makes it feel like you're kind of building a cool combo. And there are different types of attacks here. I mean, there are different elements. There are attacks that hit AoE or single target, but also the icons in the attacks are important because some of them target the enemy's health and others target their stamina, which is the bar above the health. Every time you deplete a stamina bar, you can throw an extra attack from a teammate with an added effect on top of it. Once you deplete all the bars, you select a teammate to throw a combo attack with and put the enemy into a break state, where they won't attack you and will take extra damage. It's pretty basic, but the combat flows pretty well. Now, sometimes bosses will start charging a strong attack, and they'll have an icon that shows you a type of attack to counter it, like punches or sword slashes. And if you manage to interrupt it, you will also get an extra special attack thrown at them, in addition to interrupting an attack and not dying in one shot. On top of all that, there's a fairy level that increases over time. It improves your stats in battle and lets you choose from special attacks from support characters. And everyone has an awakening too that simply buffs your stats for the most part. It may also completely change your moveset, but so far all of these awakenings that actually transform your character and change your moveset have been tied to specific boss fights in story. So yeah, for the most part, it's just been buffs. But it's always cool when there's a boss fight and the game goes, nah, this is a 1v1 now, and you have an infinite awakening with this specific form, with this character, because this is how it happened in the story. And it's always cool to see games willing to break their own rules for the sake of storytelling. And in between battles, I found myself asking, do I actually like Fairy Tail? Because as I'm watching these cutscenes, I am immersed in the story. I want to know what happens next. I want to move on to the next chapter, and this never happened when I was watching the show. I would roll my eyes. I found Fairy Tail actively annoying, and honestly, it might be because of the battles. I recently rewatched some of it, and yeah, the battles just don't make any sense to me. The show constantly breaks its own rules. Like, this character is dead. Oh, never mind. They just won the fight. So, by removing the fights from the story and making them gameplay, Fairy Tail suddenly became a lot better. Fights aren't being won because plot convenience. They're being won because I'm playing well, goddammit. The story isn't perfect. It's still got a lot of silly. I literally just played the fight against Irene. I cannot believe how that ended. It's so dumb. But I mean, they even wrote the power of friendship into the plot itself, and it's kind of good. So yeah, even though I still don't really enjoy Fairy Tail the show, I'm very much enjoying the story through the game. And I think as long as you don't take it too seriously, you might enjoy it too. I don't know. As for the game itself, I was loving it at the start. Now I am 9 hours in, and I'm not so in love anymore. I think this game has regressed from good to mid for me, but let me explain how I got here. First thing that knocked it down for me was the exploration. Exploring this world is just kind of janky. I like the running speed. You even get a dash sprint, so you can move incredibly quickly through the map, even though the game doesn't feel like it's prepared for it because you just clash with objects and it's kind of awkward. Yeah, it looks looks janky, but I actually do love it. My problem with it is that the exploration is not rewarded. In fact, the game very much discourages exploring early on. So you can find these treasure chests and they have a bunch of materials. More often than not, I don't know what these are for. It's just inventory vomit. There are some collectibles and some area bosses as well, but so far every boss area has been pretty much the same fight. And the collectible rewards haven't been anything special so far, but I haven't collected all of them, of course. But to me, the worst part of exploration is the way the game is gated. Basically, there are some obstacles in the world that you simply cannot break. There's a tip that pops up saying, hey, you don't have any characters that can break this. Oh, so I don't have any characters, huh? Then how come Gajeel just decided to jump this? He can jump now. He just decided that. I've had Gajeel since the prologue. The first time he runs into a cliff in a cutscene, he's like, just jump this, bro. And now I can jump it magically. And so exploration often feels like a waste of time because you can't clear these gates until later in the game. And that is just encouraging me to postpone the exploration until later. I just don't know when later is. Natsu literally does his fire breath 6 hours into the game to break a bunch of sticks that were impossible to pass through until now. I swear this is like the second ability he's ever done in the show. Suddenly he remembers to use it 6 hours in. But to be fair, the exploration is not all bad because if you see yourself becoming overleveled, the game lets you punch everyone without even going into battle and you still get the XP and items as if you fought them, so that's pretty nice. Speaking of combat though, it also became a bit repetitive. Now, I praised the combat just now, I just did it, and I do stand by all the things that I said, but I was also expecting it to keep evolving and giving me new challenges with each boss fight. Unfortunately, I don't think the boss fights are that different at all. Despite loving the pace of the game and the boss fights being very frequent, every time I find a new one, I'm no longer excited about the fight. I'm excited about the story and the plot and where it's gonna go, but the fight itself, they all feel very samey to me. The gameplay boils down to the same things. I mean, bosses have different elemental weaknesses. For the most part, I found that you can just ignore these. Much like the previous game, Natsu is just a damage monster. It doesn't matter if they resist fire or not. But let's say you even take that into consideration. Sure, you're gonna switch characters to the ones that have the elemental weakness of the boss. The game still doesn't change much. If they're charging a strong attack, you react to interrupt it. If they're not charging a strong attack, you just focus down the break gauge first and then the health bar, rinse and repeat for as many turns as it takes. Now, please note that I'm not saying that this game isn't hard. It has 4 difficulty settings to select from. If you pick hard or Ragnarok, you're getting the challenge you wanted. This game is tough. I just didn't feel like the different bosses made me play very differently. In fact, the systems actually started to feel a bit frustrating when I bumped up the difficulty. For instance, you can't switch characters until an animation is fully done. And that doesn't feel snappy enough when the game is literally asking you to react to stuff. Right here, I'm fighting against Wendy, don't ask why, and she starts charging a move that can be countered by sword attacks. So I switch to Lucy right away, who has a sword attack even though it is pretty weak. I throw it, it deals some damage, but not too much, and so I start spamming the button to switch to Erza. The game doesn't let me do it until the animation is fully over, and so by the time I gain control of Erza, the CPU has already chosen her attack. I didn't pick this. It was the CPU before I switched over. So Erza has already wasted her turn, which means I couldn't stop the move that the boss threw at me. I have died to stuff like this, and it is frustrating. The game doesn't let you switch when you want to. I know we're mid-animation, but locking me out of character switching when you're asking me to react to these attacks on the fly does not feel right. And it wouldn't even be a problem if the AI was smart enough to use the correct attacks to interrupt the enemy. Unfortunately, you gotta get in there and stop the AI from being dumb because they're kind of random. Now, none of this makes the game bad for me, but it is far from the surprisingly good game that I thought it was during my first couple of hours. Now that the novelty has worn off, what catches me off guard and what I'm looking forward to the most is the story. I mean, this is the first time that I met the wonderful character known as Jacob. He cleared half of the guild instantly and then lost because, oh no, women. They got rid of a lot of systems from the previous game for the better, in my opinion. Stuff like building up the guild was a bit tedious. This time they focused a lot more on character development. Everyone has a different talent tree and some equipment slots. It's a bit too much for me personally, too many talent trees to manage, which is why I'm happy that you can just set them to auto level if you want. I did that for everyone except for Natsu. I still want to feel like I'm leveling up and making choices. I just don't want to make those choices for like 10 different characters, but you can if you want. It's there. And I honestly want to see this game through. I'm definitely mainlining it. I don't care about the collectibles collectibles or the campfire stories, but I'm loving the way the game is telling its story as someone who is seeing this story for the very first time. And I never thought I would be playing a Fairy Tail game for the story. That's by far the biggest achievement of this game for me. That said, I probably won't be doing a full review for this game. Koei Tecmo Europe fumbled the codes this time around, so there are already plenty of reviews out there, mostly from American media or content creators. And also from people that know Fairy Tail way better than me. Basically, I don't think I'm the right person to review this game in particular beyond what I just did today, but I am going to finish it on my own time. That said, with the game time I have right now, I am pretty sure this is not going to be my favorite Fairy Tail game this year. It's probably still Fairy Tail Dungeons. You can check that game out right here. Thank you for watching. Bye.